order. As we get going on our agenda, I would like to reiterate our mandate, as I do in every meeting. The mandate of the commission set out in the Washington State Redistricting Act is to accomplish state legislative and congressional redistricting in accordance with the Washington State Constitution. The bipartisan commission was created to listen to the public every 10 years so the districts should be drawn by statute and with public input. As the chair of the commission, I will articulate and manage the commission's process. In my role as chair, I will ensure the process is as participatory, fair, and equitable as possible. The bipartisan commissioners have the power and the responsibility to vote, ultimately creating and adopting a redistricting plan. Voting commissioners will make decisions that will create maps to best represent the interests of all Washingtonians. Those of you from the public who are joining us this evening, welcome. It's my goal to engage communities across Washington as fully as I can and to hear and address your concerns and requests. We will certainly deliberate on the issues where we have jurisdiction. Where we don't, I'll do my best to refer you to those who may be able to respond the most effectively. I want to review our purpose and values as I do at the beginning of every mission. The commissioners have agreed to an open, transparent, and credible process to provide access to everyone, to welcome all voices in a process that's grounded in the statute. The conduct of the commissioners is one of transparency. The commissioners have agreed to participate and negotiate in good faith and to collaborate and cooperate civilly and respectfully. And the outcome this commission is striving for is to meet our deadlines outlined by law, to produce the best possible maps, and to make sure that the outcomes are credible to everyone. As I do every meeting, I want to review the public input that we've received since our last meeting. It's my intention to reiterate what I've heard since March 8th. We received one communication requesting parity in the commission's relation to Indian tribes. We also received a request for equity in the commission's relation to Indian tribes. We have received one request for an explanation for how incarcerated individuals will be taken into account in the redistricting process. And we received a request asking for the commission to take action on a rigorous code of conduct in the interest of commission and legislative staff and the public. I would now like to call roll. Commissioner Joe Fain.
Present.
Commissioner Paul Graves.
Present.
Commissioner April Sims. And Commissioner Brady Walkinshaw.
Present.
Good to see you all. So as usual, I'll use an order that we've agreed on in advance to make sure everybody has the opportunity to speak first at some point. So the order this evening is Commissioner Walkinshaw, Commissioner Fain, Commissioner Sims, and Commissioner Graves, and we will rotate from there. And thank you. I'd now like to move to approve the meeting minutes for the meeting that we held on March 8, 2021.
Move adoption of the minutes.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Oh.
Any items for discussion or amendment? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so we have approved the minutes. I would now like to introduce our panel for this evening from the United States Census. First, we're going to hear from Lorraine Ralston, and I'm just going to take this moment to introduce her. She's a senior partnership specialist for Washington with the U.S. Census Bureau. She began working for the 2020 census in late 2018 and was responsible for outreach in 18 counties throughout the state. Her job included working with local governments, nonprofit organizations, the business community, and other groups to promote the census and encourage participation. A resident of Pierce County, she's lived in Washington since 2004. So welcome, Lorraine. I would also like to take this opportunity to introduce James Whitehorn, who is the chief of the Census Redistricting and Voting Rights State Office. where he manages the Redistricting Data Program and the Section 203 language determinations required by the Voting Rights Act. He began his career at the U.S. Census Bureau as a geographer. In the Geography Division, working and eventually leading the effort on the geographic support to the Redistricting Data Program. Before joining the Bureau in 2006, James worked on contract for 5 years at the Civil Rights Division at the U.S. Department of Justice as a Geographic Information System Specialist. James holds both a BS and a BA in Geography from the Pennsylvania State University. So welcome to you, James Whitehorn. We're glad that you're both here. At the end of both of these presentations, we will have a period of Q&A. So first, I'd like to welcome Ms. Ralston, if you would like to begin your presentation.
Great. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you so much, members of the commission, for inviting me here this evening to give you a little bit of information about the census. I just want to give you an overview of the outreach that we did here in the state of Washington and what some of our partners did throughout the state, and give you a little bit of some of the results that we got at the end. And then James will obviously go more in depth into the redistricting process. Next slide. So just to review, the mission of the Census Bureau is to count every person once, only once, and in the right place. Next slide. And what we do in the partnership program, sorry, Maria, next, yeah. And what we do in the partnership program or the outreach program is actually a threefold mission. Our job in outreach is to educate the population about the census so that they understand why we're doing it, why they need to be counted. We want to encourage people to self-respond, and I'm going to circle back to that a little bit later, why self-response is so important to us. And finally, in the outreach program, we really wanted to engage with organizations to help us reach those populations of people that are going to be a little bit harder to count for us, people who might not be motivated to participate in the census. We find that that local engagement really helps us make sure that people can get counted. Next slide. So our key message throughout the 2020 census was that it was very, very easy to be counted, that it was never easier to be counted. We offered 3 ways that people could be counted this time. They could go online to answer the census, they could call a toll-free number to answer the census, or they could complete a form that they might have received in the mail. So that was our key message that we and our partners tried to promote this last year. Next slide. Within the state of Washington, our partnership program really started in late 2018. We had a staff of about, varied from time to time, but generally speaking, there were about 25 of us working throughout the state to promote the census. There were 20 general partnership specialists, kind of jack of all trades. We worked with a variety of organizations. We had 4 people specifically working with the tribes in the state of Washington. We had 1 person who was our liaison with the congressional delegations, both at the state and the federal level. And we had 2 people that were working specifically with the media, that's traditional and non-traditional media. Next slide. At the end of our partnership program, our outreach program within the state, we, the 25 of us, engaged with more than 10,000 organizations across the state. That included government agencies, municipalities, nonprofit groups, the tribes, faith-based groups, the schools, and that schools from kindergarten through university, a variety of businesses and business trade organizations, and healthcare providers. We also established more than 50 complete count committees, and complete count committees are they're sort of our secret sauce with outreach. These were volunteer groups that came together within a community. Typically, they were established by the most senior government official in that area. So it might have been a county commissioner that pulled the group together, or a mayor. It included a variety of people from the community, community leaders, organizational leaders, nonprofit groups, business community, and they worked together with us to raise awareness about the census and help motivate people to answer the census. Next slide. So as I said, in Washington, we had more than 50 complete count committees. The state of Washington itself had a complete count committee that was convened by the governor. We had 28 counties that participated in complete count committees. Some of them established their own, some counties worked together. We had 10 tribes that created their own complete count committees. And then we had 13 other groups, affiliated groups that came together for their own groups. And the complete count committees were absolutely invaluable in the outreach that we did in the state, and really made a difference in encouraging people to participate in the census and to not be fearful about being counted in the census. Next slide. This just kind of gives you an overview of where those complete count committees were. You can see the different counties that participated in the program, the tribes that established their own complete count committees, and then just a few examples of those other groups that I was talking about. For example, the Filipino American group came together and created its own complete count committee to make sure every Filipino American in the state got counted. Next slide. At the state level, we had an incredible amount of support from the state government. As I said, Governor Inslee established the statewide complete count committee that kicked off in October of 2018. Former governor and former Secretary of the Commerce, Gary Locke, was the chair of that group. And the coordination of the complete count committee was done through the Office of Financial Management. There was also about $15 million approved by the state legislature to support outreach efforts here in the state of Washington. And OFM was responsible for the process where that money got out to the different complete count committees around the state, or any other organization that applied for funding to help with their outreach efforts. Next slide. And this just gives you an idea of some of the groups that participated at the state level. We had a variety of organizations that had a statewide reach. We had some representation from members of the legislature, and we also had some tribal representation on the statewide complete count committee. So next slide. So I just wanted to kind of give you a bit of a taste of some of the things that we and our partners did, those 10,000 organizations that put their hands up and said that they were happy to work with us to promote the 2020 census. So I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but I just really wanted to show you all some of the great work that was done. Next slide. So a lot of our partners created their own graphics, their own logos. We in the Census Bureau had our own toolkit of materials that can be used, but a lot of our partners took that toolkit and created their own look and feel. And there was a variety of things around the state that gave it kind of that local feel that made it people feel a part of the census in their community. Next slide. We also had a lot of printed materials that were created. Here's some examples. The example in the middle is a series of 5 ads that Jefferson County did that ran in their local newspaper, featuring 5 people from the county talking about how they use the census and why it's important to them. It was an incredibly effective campaign that they did in Jefferson County. Next slide. A few more examples of some of our printed materials. On the right is a full page ad that was in the voter booklet that went out in 2019. Again, encouraging people to answer the census. Next slide. We also had a lot of postcards and mailers that were created. And this particularly was a very effective way for our partners to reach the more rural parts of the state, states that didn't have as much access to the internet as we liked. We would have liked a lot of counties and cities develop their own postcards and mail them out to their residents, encouraging them to participate in the census. Excuse me, next slide. A few more examples here. We also had some libraries that sent postcards out, and it was just a great way to reach out and for people to get information directly from their local jurisdiction. Next slide. Social media was incredibly important for this census. Obviously, the pandemic hit us just as we were kicking off and getting ready to start counting people. We had to shut down a lot of our operations. Our partners had to, all of the plans that they had to do all these wonderful things, all of this outreach, they had to stop doing it. So social media became an important part of how we communicated. A lot of our partners created virtual backgrounds for Skype meetings, Zoom calls, things like that. Again, the postcards became invaluable as things got mailed out. Next slide. A few more examples of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everything was used on social media. Next slide. We also did a lot of webinars. We created a lot of videos. A lot of our partners, particularly our complete count committees, created their own websites with local information about how important the census was to their community and what their community stood to lose if not every person was counted. Next slide. Again, here's a few more examples of some of the websites that some of our counties created. Some of the libraries created their own websites with providing information about the census, the history around the census, and all of the information that is gleaned from the census, how it benefits the community. Next slide. We also had billboards and signage around the state. Hopefully some of you actually saw some of this if you weren't locked down completely in your homes. Again, it was unfortunate in the timing, but we had quite a few billboards. On the left, there was a great billboard in the Tacoma area. I think it was at the Emerald Queen Casino. We had big banners going up in some of our cities. Next slide. And some of our other partners put signs up on outside of their businesses, on their fences. The schools put things up. So we had a great amount of large signage out in the communities, encouraging people to get counted. Next slide. We also did a lot of meetings and presentations throughout the state. For the 2 and 3 years before the census. We did presentations, the Census Bureau, our partners did presentations. They did presentations in their language. We made sure that we had a lot of outreach in the languages that the people speak here in Washington to make sure that people understood why they needed to be counted and why it was important to their community. Next slide. We also did a lot of outreach to immigrant communities, refugee communities. We had Governor Locke was gracious enough to come speak at a lot of our kickoff meetings and was always willing to get out there in the community and encourage people to be part of the census. Next slide. We also had television interviews, we had rallies, we had lots of presentations to social groups, social clubs, Kiwanis clubs, Key clubs, Lions clubs, things like that. League of Women Voters was incredibly active, doing a series of town hall meetings throughout the state. Next slide. A lot of our partners created giveaways. We had some giveaways from the Census Bureau and our partners took it to the next level. We had customized shirts for different parts of the state of Washington. When we started distributing food around the state during the pandemic, a lot of our partners created bags that could be used and given away at the food distribution sites. Walmart gave a gift card as part of a raffle for one of our partners. The city of Renton did a raffle for a Walmart gift card. Next slide. And then also our tribes were very active as well. We had a lot of participation within the tribes. This is just some examples of the signage that went up. This is a billboard that the Cowlitz tribe had. I think they had 5 of these billboards along the I-5 corridor from Vancouver up to Tacoma. It was a very effective way to promote the census. Next slide. The tribes did a lot of raffles within their tribes. They gave a lot of giveaways. They had, as part of their canoe journey in 2019, we did a census event at that. So there was a lot of engagement with the tribes for this census. Next slide. We did a huge event at one of the Seahawks games. We had several booths promoting the census and giving materials away at one of the early games in January 2020, I believe. Next slide. We also had a very large program or event for partners from around the state. We had about 200 partners come to Seattle for kind of a workshop. It included our keynote speaker, the Lieutenant Governor, and also the Deputy Director of the Census. And we had lots of representatives of different groups, different populations of people in the state, talking again about how important the census was. And
So it appears that Ms. Ralston is frozen. Is that what others see? Yeah, so it's not me that's
Yeah, I
frozen.
thought maybe it was me.
Right. Okay.
She might just need to leave and come back. This does happen sometimes in committee meetings.
So let's just take a short break while she's able to log off and come back in. Next, what I'd like to do is move into our executive session. So RCW 4230.110 states in item G that a governing body is free to hold an executive session during a regular or special meeting to evaluate the qualifications of an applicant for public employment or to review the performance of a public employee. So each commissioner has had the opportunity to interview 2 finalists for the position of executive director. And I would now like to go into executive session to confer. We will resume the meeting in 20 minutes or earlier, but I think 20 minutes. So right now it is 8:26. So at 8:46, we will continue the meeting when we may announce additional time is needed for deliberation if necessary. So at this time, I would like to go to executive session.
Right there.
I don't know how they did it, but I'm going to try to play the quiet game as much as possible.
I could request her presence at the next meeting to impart some tips. I'd be grateful for that.
And for your patience, and we are now back at the Washington State Redistricting Commission meeting. And I'm now asking the commissioners for a motion on hiring an executive director. Thank you for taking the time to confer. And I wonder if there is a motion among you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I would move to offer employment to Lisa McLean for the position of Executive Director for the Washington State Redistricting Commission.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we have had an extraordinary pool of applicants for this position. I was a little worried considering COVID, considering the some of the delays in getting the commission up and running as the legislative staff is working to find a way for folks to vote remotely and let alone get the commission up and running. I did not have the expectation that we were going to have so many extraordinary candidates. We had another candidate that we had the opportunity of interviewing this week, and he has an extraordinary resume and incredible experience and would have been a phenomenal choice. I'm excited to put Ms. McLean's name forward because of her deep experience in the very subject matter that we are talking about through this process, which is census data, and more importantly, the many relationships that she has with individuals within the administration and within the Census Bureau to be able to really hit the ground running. And so I'm hopeful that she will be look favorably upon this offer. I provide nothing but huge thanks to you for the incredible efforts over the last few weeks to run through all of those applicants that came through the door, and a great appreciation for all the staff support that you had as well. So appreciate it, and hope that we can have an executive director soon.
Thank you. Others, other comments for discussion? Commissioner Waukesha.
Just would echo some of the comments previously made, that I'm really excited for the prospect of Miss Lisa McLean joining as the executive director of this small agency as we kick off our work. It's a tall order to scale up and build something and then wind it down over the course of a year. And I think we were all very excited about her background working in a whole variety of foreign environments, in addition to the more recent work around the US Census and work in engaging folks in Washington State. So I'm very excited about this, and grateful to you, Commissioner Augustine, for helping pull together a fabulous process. I know it was enormously time consuming, and we had a lot of extraordinary candidates in the mix, but would concur with my colleagues that I'm excited about the prospect of Lisa McLean, and I hope that she joins us in this important work over the course of the next year.
Thank you for your comment. Others? All right, so all in favor of making an offer to Lisa McLean?
Aye.
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 And opposed? All right, so the motion carries, and I will work to make an offer to her tomorrow. So thank you very much. And at this point, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. I want to thank you, commissioners, for your service and for your time and attention today and every day. And I want to give a thank you to staff members and members of the public who've taken the time to join us this evening. And I want to once again acknowledge that Sean Murray provided technical support, Maria Garza provided administrative support and took the minutes. I also want to acknowledge individual commission staff members who put effort into meeting commission requests and drafting documents, including Osta and Paul and Anton and Ali. Thank you. Thank you to Lisa from Legislative Support Services, HR. And thank you to AG Council, Emma, especially tonight, for joining us and for your help with preparation. And this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
I think it was always